Happy Independence, Uganda. You are watching Focus on Parliament on Civic Space TV, brought to you by the Center for Constitutional Governance. I am Kwagala, your host. Throughout our country's turbulent and quite checkered history, one institution has stood the test of time as a towering witness to both the highs and the lows, as our country struggles to establish itself as a credible member of the global community of states. On today's edition of Focus on Parliament, we revisit and retrace history by reflecting on the important role of Parliament in the making and shaping of a modern Ugandan state. In studio today, I have the pleasure and the privilege to introduce to you our esteemed viewers, the Honorable Salaamu Musumba, who is a senior citizen and a politician and a former legislator representing Kamuli district in the National Assembly. Honorable, you're most welcome to the program. Say hello to the viewers.
Yes, thank you very much. Happy Independence Day and Happy Independence Week and Happy Independence Month. It's a great pleasure to be here with you to discuss a very important pillar of statehood and a pillar of democracy in any democratic state. That is Parliament. A place that has no replica. And so very, very vital in getting it right. It's a space that is privileged to be an honorable and an august house. And those are such heavy words, and they mean exactly that. It's a great honor to serve your country as a member of Parliament. And so it should be treated so, and the country should partake of the dividends of good governance by a good legislature that works for the people.
Thanks. Indeed, it's a pleasure to have you, Honorable. Please, let us reflect on this journey of 62 years. Even in terms of, the sheer life of a human being, the life expectancy age, you would imagine that a 62-year-old is a full adult, is actually senior citizen going by the contemporary standards. So what would be your assessment of this journey thus far, reflecting on the important role of the legislature? First, give us a historical perspective.
Well, it's an honor to know that I'm an independence child, and therefore I share the long life, the 60 years, 60 plus 2 years with the country. And looking back on our lives as a testimony of what Uganda is, Uganda has been, and Uganda could have been, is to look at us. We belong to that generation. The journey of Parliament is as checkered as the journey of statehood of the country. And it might please the viewers to know that this year's Independence Day at 62 is special in that it is what you would call equidistant, meaning that in 1900, when the Uganda Agreement was signed, that was the beginning of the colonial era. It took 62 years for Ugandans to unite and get self-rule. And it's been 62 years since 1962 for Uganda to be at age 62. So at independence, before independence, we have 62 years. After independence, we have
exactly
62
years.
So if the scale you were to measure, you would balance and say what happened in the previous 62 years as a protectorate of the British, and the 62 years under self-rule. The missing point that Uganda's narrative of who we are is that nations united to form the entity called Uganda. And that these entities became a union for us to be the country you know, Uganda today. And therefore, whatever has gone wrong, we have to retrace ourselves from those 15 nations that agreed to form the entity called Uganda. Do you see them anywhere? No. They have been thrown out of the union. And so we have occupiers, new occupiers, that have eroded the basis on which we formed the country. So 62 years before independence were colonial times, in which we were basically workers on the Queen's land title. And therefore we grew coffee for the industries, we grew cotton for Birmingham to become an industrial hub, for Blackpool in UK. We acquired a railway to make it easier for the occupiers, the British colonialists, to take out the raw material they needed for their industries. So we were a labor force, and that's why our forefathers fought tirelessly to get ownership of their geographical space and take ownership of their destiny. And that's how we got the Uganda independence. So much was bequeathed to us at independence, and the most memorable, the one that has remained on our political landscape, is a governance system. A governance system which was a replica of the British system, and therefore consider it an imposed system that we've been learning over the years, eroding over the years, and getting mixed up over the years. That's why you see we are not seated comfortably, because we are copying and pasting bits and pieces of governance systems and governance structures from all over the world. At independence, we had a full Westminster model, where members of parliament elected the prime minister. And that's where they also had the president, who should have been equal to king, a ceremonial one, and then they became an executive one. If you are to look at the British system, you would see that we copied bits and pieces of the monarchy, which didn't fit well. That's why we landed ourselves in the Buganda crisis in 1966, because it wasn't seated comfortably with the parliamentary system, where the prime minister was elected by members of parliament. We went through a time of people, of parties making alliances and breaking them at a very high cost to the country and to the people. Then we ended up with a coup in 1971. And we ended up with all various versions of liberation struggle. There was the UNLA in 1979, and then there was the 98 election, which went badly wrong. Then we had the Bush 5 years in Luero. Then we had an NRC, National Resistance Movement, the 1986 thing. Then we went through what they called a movement system, individual merit thing. It also didn't work well. And so we now went into a making of a new constitution. And this was the ninth.
Ninth parliament?
Ninth constitution.
Okay. For the country.
Patchwork, a lot of patchwork all over. If it was a road, a political path, it would be full of patchwork, patches that don't even look alike. That's the journey, the 62-year journey that we have walked so far. And when we came, when 1996, when the Bush War ended, there was a sigh of relief and a breath of fresh air. We all rejoiced. We rejoiced, I'm telling you. We rejoiced. We rejoiced. We called them all sorts of names, messiahs, all sorts of. The churches were full.
Why did that moment find you?
Oh, it found me at university. I was just concluding university. And so I was of age. I could understand all that had happened before.
Very idealistic.
Not quite.
Very optimistic.
Not quite. When this the NRA came, we despised them. We despised them for so many things, and we didn't take them serious. They were just a laughable pack, and yet we were happy to have it. They spoke normally. They spoke ordinary language, and so they won us over time. My group was the first to be graduated by President Museveni in 1987. The exact date was 23rd January, and it's like it was yesterday. So, fast forward, we go into a constituent assembly to make a new constitution. You should have seen the joy. It was palpable that for the first time we are going to make a constitution where we as citizens are participating. You know, a specialized, a special purpose delegates conference that was going to do nothing else but to write a constitution that would last and serve the aspirations of us, the citizens of Uganda, that would even make us forget the past wrongs, and that we would all join hands and move this country together. That's what brought us into politics. I was never a politician. I was invited by myself to this feeling of that it was our turn to do whatever it takes to build a new country for ourselves and posterity.
That was the singular motivation for you?
That was all. That was all, because we were not looking for money. We had money. We were working, we had jobs, and every one of us who participated then was really looking at having the honor to write a constitution for this country. Because the first one, we were told, was in Lancaster. The second one was a pigeonhole one. The third one was a proclamation one of Idi Amin. The next one was the NRM of legal notice number 1. And so this unifying effort of building a new Uganda attracted many of the young and the old, the Gen Zs then and all that. So I was privileged to be part of the parliament that gave effect to that new constitution, the 6th parliament.
That debated the draft?
No, I wasn't in the Constituent Assembly, but I was in the 6th parliament in 1996.
That enforced the new constitution.
And we wanted to grow the latitude and the depth of the whole meaning, the gist of a constitution as we had made it, as the aspirations. And everybody was fresh. The memory was fresh. What did we want to achieve? How did we do this? And that's when we got a hybrid constitution. It borrowed the presidential system from the US, and it also borrowed the parliamentary system from the United Kingdom. And so fitting these two systems and so that they would work for the development and for serving the justice system, serving the thrive, to make sure people thrive, people belong, people become citizens again, was the overriding goal. Of course, it didn't work well. That is when you could see that the ages, it was beginning to break at the seams. Because then we had a very strong parliament, that was exercising its newfound legislative space. And then now you had a president who kept reminding everybody that he had been elected by the entire country.
Was he domineering even then?
Even then, yes. He kept wondering, I think it puzzled him, that there was a shared mandate of running a country, which was new to him, being a military man, used to giving orders, okay? And being challenged by largely young people. We were young. We were 30. We were young, but we were very versatile. And we knew the trade that had brought us.
How were you able
and we were very knowledgeable
to push back against his overbearing character?
Well, we did so, first of all, early enough, very early in the 6th Parliament, it became clear that the guys that had been in the Constituent Assembly or any other previous parliaments were more assertive and more knowledgeable about what needed to be done. And then they found an equal number of people who were new in the trade and who were young, who had joined them. And so while they were talking two different languages, but soon they merged to chart out a way forward. And so we, the new ones and the young ones, we formed ourselves into an association which we called the Young Parliamentary Association. And we set it up because we were in a no-party system. And so we needed, first of all, to educate ourselves. It isn't like this time where ignorance is a right. In the 6th Parliament and the subsequent 2 parliaments, you only spoke when you knew. If you didn't know, you were required. The etiquette was such that get to know before you speak. And so we set up that association to help us learn, to help us grow into leadership, and we actually aspire to be national leaders. And so we set up a platform that would enable us to find knowledge in the entire world to make us fit the job. Because we found ourselves wanting. We evaluated ourselves and said, look, we are in the right place at the wrong time. And that also came because this country lost a lot of people in war, but also in HIV/AIDS. And so we found ourselves not the right generation to be in those places.
You were there out of necessity.
We were there out of the situation that had hit our country. I remember going to Nairobi to have a discussion with the members of Parliament of Kenya, and I had first to apologize because when I stood up to speak, I was looking at my grandparents, and that scared the hell out of me. And so they were also really wondering, what is this kid up to? Has Uganda run out of members of parliament to bring us this kid? And so I first had to go and apologize to them and say, listen, I'm not your ordinary expectation, but please understand where I'm coming from. I find myself in this position because there are cohorts of our population that are missing. So please understand me. And that's when they got comfortable. And I did that with the understanding that human nature expects certain age groups to be in particular places in the scale of growth. So the Young Parliamentary Association also, we needed to find out what our country looked like. So we went round the country at our expense. At that time, Parliament didn't even have offices. They didn't have nothing. You only had the chamber. The rest of the parliamentary building was occupied by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs on one side, the police on one side, President's office on the other side. And so a member of Parliament's office was in the handbag. There were no mobile phones even at that time. So it was time that collected us. At 2 o'clock, you came for plenary. And therefore, there was no canteen as well. So you just walked from the parking yard, through the lobby to
the chamber.
To the chamber. So we found it very inadequate. And so I remember the Honorable Erika Ruhanga saying, listen, we must put in place a committee system. I got to understand that it hadn't been there. The committee system was an invention of the new constitution. And so there was so much to put in place. I remember elders like Honorable Manuel Pinto, very, very articulate in wanting to chart a new path for the legislature to make meaning to the country. Remember, during their meantime, the 9 years, there hadn't been a parliament. And so there were so many missing joints, and it fell on the 6th parliament to fix all that. And I was happy to be part of that group that sought to fix parliament. We had also been expelled out of the Commonwealth.
For what reason?
One, because of Idi Amin, who had ended parliament. And then in the 1980s, there was a UNLAF, some concoction of sorts which wasn't working well. And then the NRC, because it wasn't being elected by adult suffrage, it was not considered a real parliament because it was by colleges. And so the Commonwealth took particular interest in this new parliament, and also the American people through their embassy also took interest. And so they invested a lot of money to get the parliament working. And we were in the right place at the right time to receive, replicate, and multiply the goodwill and the good governance that we were receiving from all these very developed polities. And that's how we set up the Parliamentary Commission. I was one of the pioneer commissioners of that Parliamentary Commission. And there was a lot of investment. That's when we digitalized Parliament. When we became a commission, then we got new energy, new powers, and we could exert ourselves. We just walked into the Ministry of Internal Affairs and said, listen, Internal Affairs, you have 6 months to vacate. And they resisted that for some time. And we went back to plenary and said, we will not have a plenary until that has happened. And so that's when they moved to what is the place they are at in
along
near Zambia.
That's Internal Affairs.
Chibuli, yes.
Oh, okay.
Internal Affairs went to Chibuli.
Before it became CID? Because
they first went and parked there first, and then they came back to what then was previously the British High Commission. So when the British High Commission moved to Chitante, then the police took over, and then they went to Naguru. Then we threw out Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and that's when they also received a grant from the Chinese to build a Foreign Affairs office block. Office of the President too, we threw half of it out, and that's how we acquired the Commonwealth Hall downstairs, and they stuck with the Cabinet Office and the Cabinet Library. So we cleared in order to get space for members of Parliament. And that's how Parliament became itself.
Before we progress any further, Honorable, what was the reception of the wider Ugandan citizenry?
Wow. It was
with respect to the
both
the membership,
the content,
but also the mandate in terms of implementation of Parliament.
I think Ugandans have never been as happy as when they had the 6th Parliament. It was palpable. because the gallery would be full of people that had come to follow the proceedings. The country was at its best spirit, that they could see a serious team that was focused on nation building and straightening out the country institutions to operate normally. Because we were normalizing a country that had gone through a lot of trouble for about 2 decades. And so this was a new beginning. The radios, the media, I remember the attention, the Onyango Bows, the Wafulo Gutus, the Fono Pondos, the Mwendas, you know, and the quality of
the discourse, both public and in parliament.
It was too much. For us, the young people, we spent a minimum of 2 years just learning the trade from the seniors who were super, you know, super class. And the public was really enchanted. The public, actually, I think they even became laid back. They took it for granted that it would be like this all throughout. And that is when the cracks began to happen between the legislature and the executive. The style of work changed, because us who were new in the movement system, we were told that in the bush they had open methods of work. And so we took it literally. And
what
so
are those, if you may substantiate?
The open methods of work is that when something was tabled, we discussed it honestly. And we gave it full attention. And we even went ahead to give recommendations that at some point took us into fighting corruption, corrupt tendencies. And so we went on to begin censuring ministers. You
did so in the 6th Parliament?
We did. So we censured Jim Muhwezi, we censured about 4. And then there was paralysis. They said, no, these kids are serious. They will take out your government. And that's when they started saying, no. This parliament is hostile to the executive. That's where the trouble began. In exercising the full extent of the powers of the legislature and checking the excesses of the executive, doing effective oversight, and calling government to order. So that became a problem for the executive, because the executive had been in power 10 years and was so laid back with their NRC, underfunded, underutilized, and really it was a phase of recovery. The 10 years of recovery, yes, I must be very fair to them. They had to deal with so many things to sort out, coming out of a 5-year guerrilla war, putting institutions back on track, doing the best, because even the people who came from the bush were as primitive as the bush they came from. They had to deal with power afresh, structured power, not bush power. And so they were also stabilizing a nation. There was still a war going on in the northern part. There was still insurgents all over. So they were dealing with actually collecting the country back to function as one. And remember, that is a time when people have lost power. And so there's a lot of serious threats between the ones that have lost power and the ones who have acquired it. So that transition too was a bit jittery. And so NRC dealt with that. And we felt when we came into the 6th Parliament that that phase was done. Now a new phase was beginning with a new constitution and a new appetite for a new country. So, but the template hadn't changed. You know, you can up your game and not up your software. the software hadn't been
And
updated.
who was the author of the template?
The template was the one and only president.
The one with the vision.
The one man with the vision, with the 10-point program, and then expanded 15-point program, which they quickly forgot to implement. And that's when also the world went through some changes in policy and also in doing the governance structure. That's when we got into privatization and liberalization, and the World Bank was on our heads, and policies were being affected by foreign interests through those policies. And so we were pushing back. We pushed back largely on privatization and liberalization. That is when the country, the executive was seeking to sell off everything, and the parliament was resisting to sell off our family goodies. And so at that time we experienced very serious asset stripping. That's when the robbery began, actually. And there were heated debates. There were so many families that were getting displaced. There were people that were being entrenched. The social disharmony was palpable. There was old giving way to new, and you could tell that the northern tribes were losing power, losing possession, losing opportunity, losing jobs. And who was getting them? The new powers.
The conquerors.
The conquerors, the victors were overthrowing everybody. And so there was a lot of dissatisfaction that you could see a divide between North and South. And that's when you began to hear things like the North and the South. That's when you had discussions on the Buganda question. And then you had a discussion of the Northern question. Those things have never been discussed, by the way. They're still very latent. And actually they are the unresolved issues that we are going to bequeath to your generation. And you had better take interest in them. The Northern question, the Buganda question. Those two questions. Now, I don't know which other question will come in, but I'm sure there's another question whose name I haven't found yet. Because the sharing of national resources is so glaring, lopsided. It has caused a lot of distress, even where the little that is being shared, there are personalities that have taken the lion's share and disadvantaged generations of young people from education, from appropriate health care, and also access to resources that would make them thrive and have a chance in life. So those questions, the latent questions, are still there, and the old questions are still there. And so you have layers and layers of unfinished business that you will have to unpack and resolve.
Honorable, revisiting the question of governance, by focusing on the role of Parliament in the shaping of a modern Ugandan state.
Yes.
Let us hear your thoughts on the governance question. How do we get to the multi-party political dispensation, and why has it failed to achieve its core objectives? Talk us through what led you to Parliament collectively to lift the term limits, and thus, plunging us into the current governance crisis that we seem to be deadlocked in.
You see, the deceit, the deception, and the political thuggery that has characterized our politics since independence has only changed personalities, but the gist of it remains the same. Emasculating processes and procedures, overrunning processes. But in our time, there's also what you call institutional decay. Institutions have decayed. They have failed to renew themselves. And why have they failed to renew themselves? Because of the way the human resource is deployed, okay? The way they are identified.
The lack of meritocracy in our systems.
The blatant lack of merit across. Nepotism is at the heart of it. Sectarianism is at the heart of it. And a breach of the constitutional spirit is at the heart of it. And this has been done with such brazenness that you wonder what that first 10 years of NRM meant. You know, we actually sang the 10-point program. But if you asked anybody of that lot what the 10-point program was, you will not receive any answer, because they abandoned it. I remember the biggest thing about the army is that the army was not supposed to do business. An army officer was not supposed to do business. That's the first thing.
Had you codified it in the constitution?
Yes, it was, even in their army regulations. And I remember that was partly the reason why Honorable Jim Muhwezi was censured. Because you see, when the army does business, it compromises the state. Look anywhere in the world, it's a standard procedure, it's a standard rule for the military not to engage in private business, because they get compromised, as you can see now. And so how did we get here? We all belong to the movement. And we came to Parliament under individual merit. And so when we got to Parliament, then there was another invisible hand that was moving things around, moving the dice around. And so one day, I remember...
What was it dangling then? Certain narrative, proposals?
They were dangling largely ministerial posts. Not money, I don't remember money, but posts.
Favors?
And favors that were largely non-monetary. And so the parliament was quite intact until we sought to find a backbench leadership that would allow us to debate politics and the country and its future outside the plenary, because there was no space. We all walked into Parliament as individuals. We met in plenary. And so we soon began to understand, to align according to someone's
viewpoint,
perspectives. And that's how we got into the Young Parliamentary Association. And it was non-partisan. So it was a collection of fantastic brains talking about the future of the country. And that startled the executive, because we kept throwing out their proposals. I remember the first proposal, because in the past, government could obtain a loan without informing anybody.
Without parliamentary
approval, just an executive thing, cabinet, or even outside cabinet, they could contract. But the new constitution had provided that no borrowing happens without the approval of Parliament. So the first loan that came by, which was presented by the Honorable Basoga Nsadu as a Minister of Finance, was about vegetable oil. Vegetable oil, this thing you see with vinazis and palm oil and all those things. So they brought it and we threw it out. Quickly threw it out, asked all the relevant questions. No one was ready for the answers. We threw it out. Because that's when I remember there were people, we were being told this was Gideon Moy and group that were coming in through some corners. They said, how can we do that? Who is in charge? They said it was International it was IFAD, International Fund for Agriculture Development, and all those things. We said, no, take it back. And so they took it back. And by the time they came back, they had understood, rudely been awakened that there's a new dispensation. You don't just walk without preps. And then the other one was when we were authorizing the second national operator, telecom, when MTN was seeking a license to operate a mobile phone services as a national operator. My God, you should go back and look at those debates in the Hansard.
Let me ask you, Honorable, to hold on to your point. Focus on Parliament now takes a short break. When we return, we continue the examination of the role of Parliament in the shaping and building of a modern Ugandan state. Do stay with us.
Digital rights are those human rights and legal rights that allow individuals to access, use, create and publish digital media or to access and use computers, other electronic devices and telecommunication networks. Digital rights include a right to freedom of expression, information and communication through technology, a right to privacy and data protection, a right to credit for personal works, a right to universal and equal digital access, a right to identity, a right to anonymity, a right to be forgotten, and a right for protection of minors, among others. The state's digital rights are frequently violated through various unfair actions, for example, blockage of websites and social networks, theft of credentials, unauthorized use of people's data for personal gain, privacy intrusion, online censorship, arrests and intimidation of online users, internet blockages, and the proliferation of laws and regulations that undermine the potential of technology to drive social, economic, and political development worldwide. It is hence every citizen's responsibility to respect rights of other digital users and to speak out or report to the responsible parties when one's rights are violated.
Welcome back. You are watching Focus on Parliament on Civic Space TV. In this segment, we continue the discourse on the role of Parliament in the shaping and construction of a modern, independent Ugandan state. Honorable, please carry on from where you left it at the point where the executive overran you.
At some point, the Parliament was the strongest arm of government. And so the power relations were not equal as they should be. But that arose out of the panic and unreadiness of the executive. Of course, the judiciary was stable because it was under the care of very seasoned judges, the Chief Justice Benjamin Odoki, who had picked the mantle from Justice Wakowambuzi, the expanded judges, and they brought in people of quality. And so it was stable, it hadn't been attacked yet. And so it carried through as the most stable institution because it didn't suffer from the 5 years elections and such things. You also had the Kanyihambas, the Katureves, very seasoned fellows, civilized, not raw primitive lots like many you see today. And so the imbalance between the executive that sought to control the Parliament thought they should do something about it. Because we had reached an extent where we knew that now we needed to prepare the next president. And so we got to work as young parliamentarians.
Did you have those discussions amongst your group?
Very clearly. We weren't even backbiting or plotting. We were very clear that after President Museveni, there would be need for another president. And so this time we wanted a president from the East. And so we happily walked to James Wambogo wa Pakablo. We walked to him and said, yeah, sir, we want you to be our next president. and we want you to get ready to do so. And we thought that it would be comfortable, believing President Museveni as he came, and knowing that the Speaker, James Wapakablo, had been his roommate in Dar es Salaam University. We knew this was okay. And we knew that the East needed to have a president because we hadn't had one.
To correct some sort of historical...
No, and ours was a good one, a perfect one. And the whole country was agreed that that was the de facto number 2, Wapakablo. And he had done a fantastic job in the CA, and he was also doing a fantastic job in Parliament, in the 6th Parliament. And so then we started hearing that he was going to be changed to become an NPC, National Political Commissar. We ran to him and said, no, don't accept. We refuse you to go. And so later we were told that who are we? Are we the ones who made him? Are we the what? They were taking him to be a national political commissar so that he would have more time to mingle and meal with the country so that the world gets to know him. But the parliament was the place, the theater of national politics. And so this was a direct attack to get him out of public purview and store him in the national, it was called the Secretariat, where the Ministry of Education is. That's where they put him, and they said that he would go with his emoluments as an attraction of personal to holder, which they didn't even pay him, so they packed him there until he died. That story is a long one, long, winding, and painful one. I hope one day somebody gets the courage to write about it. So, then we heard that there was a hit list. You can be sure I was on that hit list. There were people that would not be allowed to come back to Parliament.
You had to be purged.
Woohoo! And so we went down in the villages, in the constituencies, and the propaganda machinery wasn't yet very strong to undo the resolve of the people. And so I came back with my colleagues to the 7th Parliament, and that's when they introduced the Constitution Amendment.
They weren't targeting the term limits?
They want the term limits. And that's when we said, listen, please, no. And by that time, Dr. Besigye, in 1999, had written a letter to warn the country that the NRM, for which he had been a national political commissar, the job that later was given to the Honorable Wapakablo, that the NRM had veered off, and he had asked that let's discuss
the correct
this
course.
Let's discuss this matter. Still believing that they were using the open methods of work they had come with from the bush. He was just arrested. And we had the worst violent elections of 2001. And then he escaped to exile in South Africa.
That was the one that returned you to Parliament as well?
Yes, I came back to Parliament by luck. And I can tell you, and I can tell the country, that my return to Parliament, I owe it to the late Noble Mayombo.
You're then political adversary?
No, we were buddies.
Okay.
Because we were all young people, we were all patriots.
So
we were buddies. He was such a lovely man.
The politics hadn't got as much corrosive at a personal level.
No. It was all well. And so when he would hear of plots that were not adding value, of course he had a soft heart for some people, and I was one of them. And so when I called on him, he was there at the right time, at the right place. And what was this? they would send gangs to overrun villages. And so you would take a call and say, my brother, what is this? I say, where are you? What's happening? And then he would neutralize that situation. And so when we came back,
where did the proposal to amend the constitution to lift the term limits originate from?
It had been lingering, a lingering threat, and it was part of the things that Dr. Besigye warned in his 1999 letter.
He had pointed it out?
Yes, he said, something is going badly wrong. And that's when we got information from our own, the Honorable John Basheja Kazora, said that, listen, they had a meeting as a parliamentary group, and the president had addressed them and about many things about the country. And so when they heard that Dr. Besigye was going to contest with President Museveni, they thought that they should not stir the waters. Let us give him one term. In any case, he is eligible for one more term. We can wait. That's what the elders, the Amanya Mshegas, the Elia Kategayas, the group were counseling.
The youngsters, the young turks?
No, they were counseling Dr. Besigye. Don't contest.
Okay.
Don't rock the boat.
Now.
And so he told them that, no, you don't know who you are talking about. And that's where we got the classic quote that if President Museveni does not change the constitution, then I'm not my father's son. He swore by his father. And
it's been vindicated.
Of course. So the others, like all of us, didn't believe. We said, no. President Museveni can't tamper with the constitution. This constitution he has made, it's not like the Lancaster one. It's not like the Pigeonhole one. This is the people's constitution. We argued and argued. And so when it happened, this entire country looked back and said, trouble has begun.
What was the president's attitude during the course of the debate?
You know, he was in hiding, working through people like Kawoya, the Minister of Health, Anifa Kawoya, working through people like Mwesigwa, somebody who was an in-law of Mama Babazi. She was an MP for Kabale. Through a consort of Hope Mwesigye. There was Beatrice. Beatrice wasn't. There was a pack of ladies that spearheaded this.
Largely ladies.
Ladies, it was largely ladies.
It's an interesting choice.
Yeah, and that's what brought us to where we are at now. The constitution was amended through cash, and the rest is history, as you would say it.
So, Honorable, you talk us through the now new political dispensation, the multi-party political system.
Then, part of the pack of amendments was that we go back to multi-party politics, and that we should have a referendum for that. Parliament refused and said, listen, this is bogus. And so that is what brought on board Ochegere the person, who is now, I think, an envoy somewhere, Sudan or somewhere, an ambassador. And then the president was the chief promoter of turning back into multi-party politics. Those who wanted the multi-party politics reinstated went by the symbol of a tree. The ones who did not agree went by the symbol of a house. And so the joke was, let the tree hit the house. We never participated. We boycotted that.
Why the
And
sudden
so,
change of heart for the president?
We let him run with it. And he ran with it. And then, because he had been castigating multi-party politics, he had been castigating the former political leaders, the former presidents. Everybody was called swine. There was something, some abusive word about the previous leaders. And so, promoting it in a clumsy way as we did, first of all, we went back begrudgingly to multi-party politics. It wasn't given the time, the space, the latitude for that transition to happen. And so it was like a cesarean section. When a child is born by cesarean, we're just cutting the multi-party out of the constitutional womb.
So it was rather forced?
It was forced. It was forced, and it was never nurtured properly. It was thrown at people. And that was deliberate, to give an edge of the NRAM. And that's why the name of the party resembled the name of the system. The political thuggery I'm talking about started then. That NRM, which was a system, now became a party. And so I didn't give time to people to understand. So the leftover that was passed on, so it became one of the tools that was used, the weapons used to win elections. And they kept saying, oh, those party people. The rest of the other parties were parties, NRM was NRM. You know, that deception. They ran away with that deception for years until it fell apart. That's why Pilau now was coming in, PLU. And that one
by
also
the same playbook.
By the same playbook. And it also had a stillbirth. But it has been kept now. It's in, you know, when... Incubator. Now it's in the incubator. The managers of this game are now stalking the country to see what next, when is the appropriate time now to bring it. And, you know, everything is done with ill will, you know, ill will, not done patriotically. It serves only one interest, and that interest is to maintain the power, the stranglehold on power, and make sure that others are disadvantaged by all these manipulations they do every 5 years. So how do we find ourselves here? We find ourselves here using the same playbook of Obote, of Amin, of Mwanga, of Museveni. It's the same playbook.
Talk us through how the lifting of the cap on the age limits has further entrenched the governance crisis of the country, because then we had hoped that even
that the next safeguard was nearby.
Yes, we still
By
had
the
some
way,
sort of
the
safety
country
valve.
had gotten comfortable knowing that, listen, well, term limits, we will return them when it's an appropriate time. But surely he's going to be caught by the age limit.
The age limit. And he himself, the president, had indicated in an interview that by the time a person makes 75, is no longer as mentally agile to, you know, run, and get preoccupied with
and that remains
very vigorous
remains,
affairs of the state.
That remains the situation. His judgment was right then, and is still right right now. So then it starts floating things. You start hearing them from the Nsubuga, Simeons, you know, these happy yappers yapping all over the place, you know, attention seekers, you know, and they set them up for Simeon Nsubuga. Simeon Nsubuga. He started something and it was hijacked from him, and it ended up with Majezi. At the end of the day, you know, the guy who started it is not the guy who ended it. And so in that aisle, in that corridor of Bandabe, of show-offs. I did it first, breaking news. That kind of bogus politics. That's where you find miyayus, political miyayus, excelling. And the pushback has only been helped by technology now and the different media platforms. That is what is likely to salvage the situation. But yes, the age limit came, and if you will recall, that's when I think there was an effort to find the right age of the president. That's when he took a walk to some church where he is said to have been baptized to check the real age. And once he checked the age, then he realized that he had to do something about it. And so he did something about it. This time it was so tense, and it required a military attack into the plenary. And that reminded everybody, you know, Ugandans are so emotional, where they shouldn't be. For the generation of my father, they just fell back into crying and say, we are back to 1966. And yes, it mirrored the 1966 crisis. And it has never been the same again. Because now the true colors of what 1986 was about, the war of 1980 to 86 was about, came into full view of even the blind and the deaf.
Can see and feel it?
Yeah. It became very, very clear. Then come post term limit, age limit.
Age limit, yes.
Then you get PLU. Starts like a joke. It crystallizes. And then you see how the chessboard, the queen, knights, and the motions on the chessboard. And in full view and full glare of the world. I read an article from somebody in Kenya talking about Ruto and where Ruto is getting his script from. And what I loved about it is that our common understanding of the shared threat of our livelihood as a region is getting clearer. Yeah. So now the threats to Parliament began to grow, but they started from the Speaker, the Honorable James Wambogo Apakabulu, the movement of that. And
that was the tipping point?
That was the game changer. That was the start. And then the Honorable Ayume, and then Honorable Ayume dies in a car crash in a mysterious way. And then now you get a new leadership in Parliament. You get the first woman speaker. We also spent years rejoicing on that. You know, we never stopped dancing. We dance until the cows come home.
That's a critical point.
It was under her charge that the military actually invaded Parliament.
I want to interrogate you on that aspect, Honorable.
Yeah.
What is your assessment of the current Parliament and its leadership?
You see, the Parliament is dysfunctional, very dysfunctional. But the dysfunctionality has not started with the present leadership. No. Actually, the present leadership has just used that opportunity and vulgarized it. But they didn't set up the system. The previous leadership is the one that set up the infrastructure on which the present dysfunctionality is happening. Yeah.
So the previous system should take ultimate responsibility for the current mess?
the responsibility lies squarely on their table. Yeah. Because by the time I left Parliament, I was disgusted because we would never be allowed to speak. I remember being told by the speaker that, sit down, you want to play to the gallery. I said, sir, you didn't bring me here. I speak for my people. It's not for you. I didn't come here to watch TV like your deputy. No, I came to work because the deputy had been relegated to watching TV. I said, not me. I came to do work. I came to speak. I came to make a contribution to shaping the destiny of my country.
Did you feel you were being targeted then for maybe your divergent opinion?
I didn't care. I didn't care, and it didn't bother me. And I knew what was awaiting me in the elections, and that didn't stop me also from doing what needed to be done. And I'm very proud that I did it when I did it. Yeah. But you see, because people are seeking re-election, they are trapped by their ambition. They neglect duty, and it's criminal neglect in order to look for an opportunity to be a member of parliament again. What is the purpose of being a member of parliament in a dead country, in a dead environment, in a dysfunctional country? Yeah, particularly when you talk about senior members of parliament, senior legislators, I don't see their seniority because they're worse than the new.
What is the metric for seniority, Honorable?
I mean,
is
if
it
you've
the
served,
number of terms they have served?
Yes, if you've served more than 3 terms,
you
qualify
to be
a
a
senior
member
legislator.
of parliament.
Yeah, you do.
But most of those have been the biggest letdowns for the wider Ugandan citizenry.
They are terrible.
Take the example of your
former
party mate, Honorable Katuntu.
They actually infect the new ones. They infect the new ones. Yeah.
Parliament is currently under serious spotlight for a number of reasons. It's somewhat questionable attitude towards the element of accountability. Secondly, the Ugandan citizenry feels that Parliament has failed manifestly in its duty to check the excesses of the executive. We have a serious political...
Parliament is part of the problem of the country. Yeah.
We have a serious political crisis, and we're glad we have highlighted it here on the program. The first son, who is a senior-most military officer in the country, is projecting himself as a possible successor to the father. He has brazenly...
Why don't we say it better? As a possible candidate.
As a possible
presidency.
Okay.
Because this is not a monarchy that is succeeding its father, please.
That's a better qualification.
Yeah, that's a better qualification.
He has brazenly ventured into the partisan arena of politics.
Breaking the constitution.
Breaking the constitution.
Yeah.
And there is not even any serious comment from Parliament. There is no discussion in Parliament regarding very serious national issues. What, in your view, is the likely outcome of all this? Do we still have a holding
they don't have
constitutional order?
You see, we don't. We just breached it ourselves. They don't have the spine. This parliament doesn't have the spine.
To push back?
To do what they swore to do, to uphold the constitution. They don't have the spine. At times I call them just political terrorists, because they have failed themselves and failed the country and failed the institution. Yeah. And they do that deliberately and happily, with a glee, you know. And I think they've lost the conscience, the political conscience, to do what is constitutional.
And what is right?
Well, you may not call it what is right, what is constitutional. There are big, big aberrations to the constitutions, to the constitution, that they should be called out. Remember, if we had an electronic voting mechanism, by now we would be able to audit every member on the way they have voted. But they have chosen a marketplace, to have a marketplace. We're shouting, what you don't know which decisions they've taken and who has contributed to that decision. It's just shouting matches, a very, very alarming in this day and age, that you have a parliament that dysfunctions that way. For instance, if we had an electronic voting, as was threatened to have, by the way, they even had a budget for it, electronic voting.
For the national adult suffrage?
No, within Parliament.
Okay.
That every vote, there's a board.
Should be recorded.
Recorded who voted how. But they like it amorphous, so that nobody's held to account for their decisions. And even the public can't hold them accountable. Even the constituency doesn't know how they voted. You hear the ayes have it, even when the nays did have it. So that art of confusion is only escalated under the present leadership. Shameless.
Are we beyond redemption, Honorable? What can be done to salvage this country from the political mire that it is embedded in?
Yeah, we are beyond redemption for now. Because I don't find the zeal and the energy in the public to be served better. They have accepted begging as a national value. Begging, eh? And to pick up a population and a community from that deep, it will take an epidemic, that wipes out at least half the population. When we get to that level, then the remainder will swear never again.
That's a very bleak outlook.
No, but that's what it will take. I mean, just tell me how else it will happen. How else will it happen? For instance, if we got another outbreak of leprosy, and it went and ravaged communities, which is possible. For me, when I was chair of Kamli District Local Government, I saw that it was possible to have another outbreak of leprosy in this country, especially the way we handle money, you see, the way our personal hygiene and the way we shake hands, the body-to-body contact. And these diseases are still latent. I could also see that the resurgence of HIV/AIDS. I saw also the resurgence of sleeping sickness, because these are diseases that are not getting the budgets they need. TB without advanced medication could also have ravaged, because there's so much of it in the countryside. And then there are new diseases, diabetes, lifestyle diseases. So if, for instance, it didn't rain for a year, it is possible that this kind of situation would straighten out people and the way they decide about themselves. They would even be keen to know who leads them. But for as long as it rains and everyone is subsisting, then the national consciousness is low. And so there's very little to write home about stimulating the energy required for people to find the right leaders. When I go out, it's like window shopping. The citizens are window shopping. They like everything that they see, how people dramatize politics, how they, serious business has been replaced by comic business. And unfortunately, the country loves comedy, and they've turned themselves into comedy. And so I failed to find the seriousness required for us to turn around the body politics in this country.
Perhaps it's a coping mechanism
That's
when
true.
faced with a lot of trauma.
Yeah. That's why you find people giggling about nothing. This is a country of people giggling over nothing. When I used to work for the Red Cross, one of my bosses from Sweden said if she found Ghana strange. And she said, listen, she was called Eva von something. She said, this is where people announce bad news while laughing. If they asked you, so the last time I was here, you had a worker here. How are they? Where are they? And the response would be, they died. I said, how can that be funny? How can you respond like that? So we are discordant. But maybe, as you say, it might be that that's how people cope with very heavy-duty, difficult things that are hard to digest. But that coping mechanism cannot take us nowhere. No. Because we are looking at building a viable, competitive country with shared prosperity. You can't build it up with the infrastructure in place now. Because even corruption is a weapon. The system has allowed sections of the population to access ill-gotten money through corrupt means to dominate other communities and also to distort the market price of everything. Because they'll walk to Buyende and say every acre of land is 20 million. On an ordinary day, an acre of land in Buyende would be maybe 2 million. So once you distort the market, then you displace people. The attraction of 20 million, 100 million, now it's 100 million. It's going up every day. So they steal money from Kampala and go buy square miles. They're the new colonialists.
Pseudo-colonialists.
They are picking money that belongs to all of us, and they're going to buy private assets for themselves. And so the entire distortion is too much. It's too much.
Honorable, even as we conclude, I need to hear from you regarding the effort to register the new political party under which you are one of the senior most leaders.
Well, this situation...
How is it going, and what is the principal aim?
Listen, we need a political home. We need a platform on which to discuss national issues. We need a political platform for it. Not an NGO platform, heavy-duty political platform on which we will be seeking to influence the direction of the country, seeking to make a contribution to the governance of the country. And you can't do it alone. You know that we built a political home for ourselves 20 years ago. That's the Forum for Democratic Change. And it has been crushed deliberately with state action. And when I say that, people think I'm overstating it. But if you recall, in October last year, September last year, that what used to be meetings of the party organs now were attacked by the military. You remember the attacks that we had in Busabala by the military, the entire military infrastructure. The state cannot move equipment when they have no stake in the matter. Even when they come to take your wife using military jeeps, you know that now this is a state matter. It's no longer a private family thing. And so that's what befell us. And this, with hindsight, looking at what had befallen Democratic Party and Uganda People's Congress, we thought, listen, this is a well-trodden path. We know where it leads. And so let us not use up a lot of our political energy into trying to recover this one. Let us set up a new political platform. For sure, this political vehicle has crashed and it can't be repaired. And it's not fit for purpose anymore. It has been infected. And that's the situation. And that's why we are seeking to create a new political home where we can do political business. And that's the People's Front for Freedom, Freedom Party. Yeah. And I invite you all to join us because we are seeking for freedom for all of us. This is what has eluded us for all these years. The 62 years of colonialism, the Musazis were fighting for freedom. 62 years post-colonialism, we are still searching for that freedom. So we're in the right place at the right time. I am sure that if we have a shared aspiration to live in a better Uganda, an equitable Uganda, you will find us attractive enough to join us, to build a new vehicle for the purpose of building a Uganda where we all are citizens.
Honorable, your closing remarks on the program.
I do pray that we all find it necessary to secure what we have built together. Because the threats that we face collectively are threats that everybody prays about, wishes away. If you saw the prayer breakfast, you would wonder what those parliamentarians were praying about. It's also a mockery of God that immediately, even what they were doing was so corrupt that they think that they can buy their way to heaven by doing the wrong thing and expecting to achieve good things. It doesn't happen that way. So let us be true to ourselves. Let's love ourselves and love our country. Let us be true to the motto, for God and my country. That is what I would ask all of us to do. Do your best for your country so that you will be well yourself. And our posterity will thank us for being nation builders, not nation breakers.
Those are words to live by. Thank you very much, Honorable Salaamu Musumba, for joining us on today's edition of Focus on Parliament, and of course for your very insightful advice to the citizenry watching us out there. Our esteemed viewers, once again, we appreciate you for keeping us company from the start of this program up to its conclusion. Many thanks to the camera department, the production unit, for keeping us live on air. Please, our viewers, engage us on our various social media platforms. We are on X, we are on Facebook. You can watch this program and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We'll see you next time. Be blessed.